In 2020, a game was released. It was the sequel to one of the most emotional and critically acclaimed stories of all time.
You go halfway across the country with someone. You're supposed to take her to the Fireflies and walk away.
This game was met to controversial opinions when it first came out and split its fan base in half.
Please stop!
And in 2024, with a remaster just being released, where do we now sit on this game? Join me as I interview some amazing creators and we give our thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cinematic Trinity, where we talk movies, games and TV shows. And this week, as you saw from that intro, we are talking about The Last of Us Part 2, the infamous video game that released in 2020. Kieran's now played it for the first time. I've replayed it with the recent remaster that's come out. And Tulip, what have you done?
I've done nothing. I have not played this game, so I am dipping out of this one officially. My only comment is, if I was to have an only comment, because I have obviously watched you played it, is that I do think it is a good game.
Alright, well...
That's my take.
Alright, well, clickers, get her out of here. Get her out of here.
What do you want me to do?
So me and Kieran are hosting this episode this week, and we are also joined by a few special guests. We've got Adam McDermott, who does Platinum Journey over on YouTube, and then TikTok stars Deadbeat Devil, and then The Last of Us Explained. So we'll cut back and forth between their thoughts as well as ours. So let's get into it. Kieran, what did you think about this game?
Well, there's a lot to kind of unpack, really.
Yep.
It's quite different to the first one, because obviously it's given like a completely different vibe, because the first one's more about kind of, you know, the journey between Joel and Ellie, and then obviously this one's a lot more kind of, you know, there's a lot more to it, but there's like, you know, there's the revenge element, and then, you know, there's a lot kind of going on there. I actually quite enjoyed the game.
Okay, yeah.
There were bits of it I didn't enjoy, and there were bits of it that I wasn't a fan of, but I understood why Naughty Dog kind of took those actions. So it kind of, you know, I got their intention, so it didn't annoy me. I just didn't necessarily enjoy those bits.
It wasn't like you were thinking, oh God, why do they do this? And it's like, I understand why they did it.
Yes.
It's just, did I gel well with that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Because obviously, Last of Us 2 is the sequel to the critically acclaimed Last of Us 1, which, you know, brilliant game, is like one of the best told stories out there in gaming, and obviously got its HBO adaptation. And the second game was just met to a lot more. It is such a divisive game, and like we'll get into the interviews, which we sort of talk on that, but like just such a divisive game. Like when it first came out, you either had to love it or you had to absolutely hate it. There didn't seem to be any middle ground at that time. Sort of replaying it now with the remaster, I still think it's a good game. I think like that, again, same as you, there are points in it which I don't like. I think for me it's like a pacing thing. Like some days for me, like some levels dragged a bit more than others, so it's kind of like but I feel like this time around replaying it, because when I first did it I was like, I don't think I can ever really go back to this game. But I kind of thought, the first game's got such good replay value. And I still kind of think that, but if I was going to replay The Last of Us 2, it's not as big of an undertaking as I was thinking in my head. Because there is, there's just, it's very bleak. You know, the story, obviously it follows Ellie going on a revenge mission because this girl Abby comes along and kills Joel. And it's, she just goes down a spiral. Just a lot kicks off.
Yes.
What did you think of like the bleakness of this story?
Well, I feel like that, because with the first one, obviously there's not much happy that happens. Like there's never really a lot of, you know, happy events. But I feel like this one is more. It doesn't give you a chance to process a lot of them, because like when some characters die. In the first one, anytime there was kind of that kind of event happening, there was usually something like some kind of build up around it, and there was like, you know, there was something there that allowed you to kind of process, accept, and then, you know, kind of move on. But this one, it was like, no, that person's dead.
Yeah,
it just happens, which is a lot more realistic, because that's how it would be in these situations, like, death is all around them, and that just would happen. But it's very kind of, it goes from 1 minute of being like you're just having a nice conversation, oh, they're dead. So it's just, it's completely different vibe to the first one. I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I mean, like, you see these characters just at a different. It's a different mindset, just because like the circumstances they've been thrown into. Because I guess like the first game, it's very much like we need to get this girl to this hospital, and then that should save the world. And obviously, there's stuff in between that sort of kicks off. They get traumatized in different ways, whereas like this is kind of non-stop stuff kind of happens, because it's kind of like, first game, oh, we've got to the city, we're trapped here, we need to escape. Nothing like traumatic happens, but it's just like in this game, we get to the sea, our horse is now dead, I found out my girlfriend's pregnant and she can't come with me, and it's just non-stop. And then obviously Abby's whole thing is her friends just get killed by Ellie, and even like Ellie killing Abby's friends is just, that's just traumatic as well. She like tortures a woman to get information. She ends up killing a pregnant lady just unintentionally, but obviously that messes her up. So it's just like nothing. You're stuck on this journey with the characters, and you're kind of like, oh god. Oh yeah, I don't know. It's very bleak, but like it's a good story. Like, I think it is a good story. It did some stuff well, and like the brief bits of levity you get are really good. Like, because Ellie gets all these flashback scenes with her and Joel, back in the day. Which one of my favorite bits is the museum sequence, which is such a good. Again, it's just a breath of fresh air, especially like Seattle Day One. Like, you've seen quite a lot. You've had that sort of chase afterwards with Dina when Dina finds out that Ellie's immune. So it's like a lot to take in, a lot's happened, but it's kind of like, here's a simpler time when things were happier. And it's just the chemistry between Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson are really good. Just Joel and Ellie bouncing off each other, and you're kind of like, why couldn't it stay that way? And it still ends on like a kind of bleaker note, that flashback, because obviously that's when Ellie can't like escape this sort of like nudging in her mind about this lie that Joel and the fireflies. So it's like even that kind of gets ripped away. But yeah,
I did like with that scene, because like when she finds it, it just says liars, and then Joel obviously steps in front of it, and then it just says liar because he takes off the S. So there's it's something that I'm glad that they took the effort to put that extra bit in. So
it's like subtle, but like feeds into obviously the theme of like, because the whole point of like those flashbacks with Joel is just how the doubt and stuff sets into Ellie's mind, and just across the years how she just can't let go what happened in that hospital, and like wanting to know, and ultimately it leads to Joel telling her what happened, and they kind of have a falling out, which like that. All the scenes are good, like the flashbacks with Joel and Ellie.
I did see something actually with because like the way that Ellie reacted to Joel, and like the fact that they went like pretty much no communication for that entire time after like she found out the truth, was that like throughout the game, like the first game, like Ellie's trying to like talk about these things like with Sam and like different things like that with Tess, and like Joel's response is just, I don't want to talk about it, it's done. So he like keeps it all in. And obviously, because Ellie's so young and impressionable, she's kind of got that from him. So it's kind of his fault. Obviously, like, he did tell the lie and, did all these things, which is awful. But if he hadn't been the way that he was during their first journey, then she wouldn't have been the way that she was kind of after she found out. And
it's even like in that. It's interesting, like with the remaster, you get the commentary and stuff, and it's like even like in that scene with Joel and Ellie when he tells her, like you can kind of see he's still debating whether to tell her the truth or like just tell another lie, and ultimately he does give in. So it's like such an interesting bit of like dynamic, and like the whole Joel and Ellie relationship is like your view on it changes like when you complete the game, because you think the whole time that Ellie and Joel like never reconciled, they hated each other, and then obviously the final cutscene plays when she goes up to Joel and says, I don't think I can ever forgive you for what you've done,
but I'd like to try.
Which is again such a good moment, like such a good bit of acting, and like it just completely, because I remember we were talking the other day, it's the whole
I was saying to you before that like there was 2 points that got me in the game, and the first was what I thought Ellie's last words to Joel was, and then the second was what they actually were. But I mean, I still need to kind of, I want to replay at least like kind of the opening bit, just so that I can get that kind of new perspective on things, really.
Because there's like small references to, like, you know, I'm gonna watch a movie with Joel tonight. It's just
Yeah.
kind of like, oh, they were literally trying to fix the relationship, because like the opening act of the game is set like the day after
Yeah.
they had that conversation. So you're like, oh god, so close.
It's very it's very gut punchy.
Yeah, that is the whole
Yeah.
experience, and like we'll get on to the ending and stuff later. So I'm just gonna cut to a couple of our guests' opinions now. So we're gonna start off with Deadbeat Devil, and then The Last of Us Explained, and then Adam McDermott giving their thoughts on the story. Where do you kind of sit, like, on the game as a whole?
Like on that sort of hater or fanboy
Yeah,
side,
it's like
I
on the spectrum.
suppose
Yeah,
I don't really see myself as either, fortunately, because I think both camps are prone to just going a bit too hard on their viewpoint, whether you defend it religiously or you hate on it till there's no tomorrow. I think both sides are kind of just failing to see, in my opinion, at least my interpretation of the story, are failing to critique the game with diligence, at least. And I understand, it's perfectly fine to love things that you may admit are flawed, which is fine. But in the recent sort of controversy that I got in with Josh Statics, the main reason I made a video in response to his was because he said that if you don't like The Last of Us 2, you just didn't understand the story, which I just don't agree with at all. I think you can fairly critique a story like The Last of Us 2, because in my mind, and I don't think it's even a hot take to say, I think most people can admit that game story has issues, like you mentioned before, the pacing and such. And I'm surprised you brought that up with Ellie, sorry, in Seattle Day 2, because for me, at least, up until that very point, the game's pacing was probably fine. It's as soon as you start playing as Abby, that's where the problems arise, at least for me personally. Like, I think everything with Ellie, in fact, everything with Ellie in the game, in the entirety of the game, I think is totally fine. But I think the problem arises in Abby's sequences because, one, they're so new, so they need to establish some sort of reason for us to be playing as her that's not connected to Ellie. And that's why you have this, this plot about the Seraphites and Lev and Yara and all this, that the player is kind of just being thrust into, which I thought was not jarring, but I thought it was like, okay, we're being forced, like they're giving us something to do as Abby because Ellie hasn't caught up to her yet. And also trying to flesh her out and stuff like that as well. But anyway, back to your original question. I think I'm more in the center, like, because most people know I'm a gameplay guy. Like, I really like gameplay. So The Last of Us 2 takes everything that was good about the first game in terms of gameplay and makes it a lot better in the second.
Yeah.
So I think, weirdly enough, like, I like the game for reasons that not many people would say they like it for, I think. Yeah.
When I played it, I think part of why it was so successful for me is because, as I said, I wasn't so involved in the community. I didn't have, I mean, obviously I loved the first game, but I didn't have like a super strong emotional attachment to it at that point. So, when, I guess we're going to talk spoilers now, when Joel dies, I was obviously shocked. I was sad. But the thing that kept me going and the thing that I was most interested in was Abby's motivation. Because I was like, they just made us play as this brand new character, and then she did this heinous thing. And I'm like, there's no way, there's no reason.
Yeah.
And I was like, when are we gonna find out? Like, and are we gonna play as her again? I was so curious. So that was kind of my motivating driver, and it just blew my expectations out of the water. It was not, as I said, not at all what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but I just remember being so impressed by their balls, like, to be crass. I couldn't believe the decisions that they were making. I thought that they were so unique and, like, brave, and definitely on a first playthrough, there were some parts where I was kind of confused, just like time wise, especially in Abby's Seattle days. I was kind of like, wait, where are we? And so it wasn't like I didn't have like a flawless understanding of it on the first go through for sure. But it was just like emotional gut punch after gut punch in a good way. And I remember getting to that final flashback of Joel and Ellie on the porch, and I was in my childhood bedroom at my parents' house, and just like tears pouring down. And then the game ended, and I was just kind of like staring at my screen for like 10 minutes. And I remember my mom came in, she's like, Are you okay? I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's just it's an exhausting experience. Like it's by no means like a bad experience, but you're there with the characters on that ride. Like I remember, obviously, like when you do the boss fight with like Abby and Ellie, and then Ellie goes to Santa Barbara, you're kind of just there like, oh come on, like we don't just pack it in, like we leave it here, and then you're forced on that journey with her. It's like kind of almost like Joel, doing what he did in the hospital, takes that control away from you as like the player, and it's kind of like, no, we're going to Santa Barbara, we're going to go find Abby, and then it's like, okay, Ellie, I will go with you and see what happens. To get all your general thoughts on like the story, what 3 years on, do you still feel like the same way? Have you like thought on it a bit more, or are you still like the same opinion?
I think the story accomplishes what it tried to do, and I appreciate the ambition of a dual narrative, but I don't think it was handled all that well. I think the execution was a bit flawed. I got very annoyed switching over to Abby for 10 hours. That was too much. That was by the end I was quite sick of her. And it's one thing to have like a cliffhanger if you can come back to it, but the idea of that you'd have almost, if it was a TV show, you'd have an entire season of a TV show to get back around to that one point.
Yeah.
I didn't care for it. Gameplay is stellar, environments look great. Still don't agree with them killing Joel. I think they left an awful lot of story on the table.
Okay.
That we probably never see. But I don't like it as much. The first one, I'm okay with it.
So obviously the kind of elephant in the room is Abby herself, because again, when the game came out, a lot of people didn't like that you had to play as Abby, who kills Joel. So having to play as the murderer, like. Did you like you obviously you didn't play it when it first came out?
No.
Did you know anything about Abby?
So there were a couple of things that I thought happened that didn't happen, so I was a bit confused when they didn't happen. But to be honest, I'm kind of glad they didn't, because they weren't very nice. But I knew a little bit. I didn't realize you had to play as her.
Okay.
And I mean, I knew a couple bits because. You actually told me that Joel died before I ended up playing the game.
Kieran joined a PlayStation group chat with me and another friend, and I was just openly talking about Joel dying because we were talking about The Last of Us, and then Kieran joined. It was it
was literally the first words I heard when I joined the game. It was just like, oh yeah, do you remember that bit where Joel died? I was like, no. So I obviously knew about that before.
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot of the kind of nuancy bits that happened. I didn't know about like the new factions and the war between the wolves and the Seraphites and things like that. And I mean, I just remember there being a lot of controversy about a load of things that happened within the game, but I never actually looked into it. So it's kind of a lot of it was quite fresh for me.
Okay, yeah.
I will say, and very annoyingly, I got spoiled for Jesse's death 10 minutes before I played that section in the game as well, which was just such a nightmare. But yeah, in terms of like playing as Abby herself, I understand why Naughty Dog did it, and this is one of those times where it's like I get what they're trying to do and I appreciate what they're trying to do, but just for me, I feel like it's trying to do like it's kind of sympathy for the villain thing, because like she's the one that we're like actively trying to get at, and it's trying to give her perspective of that side, and you can see like certain things and you're kind of like I get that things are bad for you, but also you killed Joel, so I don't like you, but I appreciate like that you're still living, and Joel obviously did like he killed your dad, he like wiped out the Fireflies, he took away any chance of there being a cure, but at the same time I understand why Joel did it. And that's why I like at the end of the game as well, when Joel has that conversation with Ellie and he says like if like by some miracle I had any opportunity to go back and make the choice again, I'd do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because to Joel, Ellie is his family.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's not replacing Sarah as his daughter.
Yeah.
It's his it's his kind of new daughter in a way. It's like he's a lot better when he's got something to protect. Yeah,
it's the whole like ending cutscene of the first game where it's like you just need to find something to fight for, and obviously like Ellie just gave Joel like a new purpose, and it's kind of like he didn't want to let that go, or just couldn't go through with it again. Hence why he, for the sake of humanity, doesn't let Ellie go through with helping with the cure, which obviously cost everyone else, but Joel got what he wanted, and then. Like, as well, like, Ellie was a young kid, like, she just hadn't lived life, so whether Joel kind of did it for selfless reasons rather than selfish, like, this kid, she has the chance to be happy and live in this community, where my brother lives and stuff, like, it's kind of that, I get what you mean, like, the whole thing about Abby is, it's an experiment by Naughty Dog to get you to try and empathise with them, and obviously how successful depends on the player, really, because some people just like, still hate Abby after playing and everything Abby goes through. But like Abby, the thing with the pacing kind of relates to her like first chapter, so it's basically it needs to introduce her as a character. This is what her like group's deal is. It's the WLF fighting the Scars. Something's kicking off in the background, like there's a big operation going to happen, and it is like because she doesn't know Ellie's in Seattle, it is just day by day, like she's going on a military patrol. And then, like, the two stories kind of, like, they don't intertwine as well until, like, the very end of, like, the story. But it's kind of like Abby's doing her own thing. Ellie was doing her own thing. Yeah, I feel like, for me, the only bit that could have really been taken out is, obviously, you get the bit in, like, the convoy. That's fine, because it's kind of, they were just doing, like, their day job. And then it got hijacked by the Scars.
Yeah.
I feel like the only bit would have been, like, when she leaves the stadium to go find, like, Owen and gets captured by the Seraphites. It's just there's, like, a, 20-minute... section of gameplay where I was like, could have probably done without this. She could have maybe got captured by the Scars earlier at like a different point. They could have just done it a bit better. And it kind of felt more drawn out for me that way. But like all the stuff, it kind of ramps up after that point, because like day 2 is when she goes to the hospital and all the stuff ensues there. That's really cool. And then obviously day 3 is the marina fight with Tommy, which is a brilliant scene. Like, did you... What was your reaction when, because they go to the marina, they're like, oh, it's a sniper here, he's trying to pin us down.
I was just like, that's Tommy. Yeah. It's going to be Tommy. And he's like, they're saying that he's like wiped out like a whole squad. Yeah. It's just like, damn. Tommy's a badass.
Yeah, that's something like, it's a scene like, so who am I rooting for here? Obviously, I kind of don't want Abby to die at this point, but like Tommy, we're not going to fight Tommy. And then Manny gets killed by Tommy. I didn't really like Manny that much on this replay. Like with Abby's like other friends, I did warm to them more because I went in with like a preconception that I didn't like Mel, I didn't like Owen, but like they did grow on me, so I did appreciate them more. But yeah, Manny, I just couldn't come around to. So when he died, I wasn't like, no, Manny.
I don't think there were any of like Abby's group that I was like, oh no, why did they have to die? Because like I like them, but also I didn't really care enough to kind of be upset when they died, because they at the end of the day they were the ones that went and went on an expedition to kill Joel. I do appreciate that when they were there, like Owen kind of did like a lot of voice of reason, like he didn't want to kill Tommy and Ellie, because it's just like, no, that makes us no better than kind of what Joel did. So he was kind of doing that there, but I thought Manny was okay.
Okay,
I didn't mind him because there was like the bit in the stadium where you see him with his dad and he's like trying to help out and stuff.
Yeah, he has like qualities, like he is just like, if it wasn't like, I feel like if you played as Abby earlier or something, like basically if you didn't have to do Ellie's sections, like knew what Manny done, like what they did, you kind of be like, oh, this guy's charming, he gets around.
He's a bit of a Jack the Lad type,
yeah.
But he's reliable when you need him.
Yeah. I know for me, he was the guy who like spat on Joel's corpse, and I was like, no one else did that. I don't like you. I know he kind of like enables Abby like probably more than the rest of the group do, like because it's the same with like the Seraphites. He's very much like, these guys need to be exterminated, like who cares about them, whereas like Mel and like the others are kind of like, oh come on, they're just kids or whatever. And like especially Owen, like his whole thing is he goes against the WLF to like save a couple of the enemy, basically. But yeah, I definitely warmed to them more on a replay sort of a few years afterwards. Because I guess like for Abby as well, you know, obviously she kills Joel. So one factor that many people can't like come back on is Abby torturing Joel. Where do you? I was going to get The Last of Us Explained's going to give her opinion in a minute, but did that impact you at all, or is it just, you know, it's like either way, if she tortured him or if she just killed Joel, you'd feel the same way. It's still just the fact.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to see Joel die. I don't think, you know, because obviously Abby would have died if not for Joel and Tommy to help.
Yeah.
So the fact that they kind of, you know, I understand there's been like you know, a seed of hatred like embedded in them for like years and years and years, or 4 years. But you know, I don't know, because what is she getting out of that by like it doesn't. I don't think it helps her with anything, does it? Because you don't really see her be happy when she's back in Seattle. You don't really see her going, oh, that's like a weight off my shoulders. It's done nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely there as like, obviously Abby didn't get any satisfaction for what she did. Like, Ellie's not going to get that either. And I don't know whether like the torture element is more of a, almost like you got to get bang for your buck. You got to make this like, I've got to torture this man because he put me through hell, and I can't, like, I feel if I put a bullet in him, he's just going to, it's over. And obviously Owen sort of rushes to it when Ellie comes in to just be like to Abby, look, finish it, like, we're done, we're leaving. And she's like, oh, what, you know, I don't want to do this. And then she, you know, just has to sort of give in and just does the killing blow. So it is interesting. But yeah, I'll cut to The Last of Us Explained giving her opinion on Abby killing Joel. Where do you kind of sit on that point about, you know, her torturing Joel maybe being the sort of pivotal point why some people don't, you know, can't quite swing round to her way of thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair. Like, it's brutal. It's horrendously, it's horrific. It's violent. It's like, and I think for her, like, when they traveled to Jackson, they didn't know they were going to find Joel. They were looking for Tommy, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, she received a tip about Tommy's whereabouts, so they had no idea that Joel was even there.
I did think about that because it's the Firefly connection, isn't it? Like, obviously Tommy used to be in with that group, and then because okay, I was thinking about that the other day. Yeah, that makes sense.
So they weren't at all expecting to find Joel. So whether she had like a premeditated plan, I don't think so. And I don't think she had a plan until Joel said, "Get it over with."
Yeah.
And she improvised. She looks around, right? She finds the golf club.
Yeah.
At first, she just has the gun. And it wasn't until he talked back to her that she said, no, tourniquet his leg, which will stop him from bleeding out so that he dies faster.
Yeah.
And grabs the golf club, because she finally finds this man and he has no remorse, no fear.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, yep, get it over with. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
And that, plus, you know, everything she just learned about Owen expecting a child, and her maybe realizing that this is the guy who destroyed my life.
Yeah.
Took away my dad, who ruined my relationship, who has made it so that I haven't been able to sleep for 4 years. Here he is in front of me and he doesn't give a fuck. Yeah. And so she was angry, and she took it out on him. Yeah. And yeah, it's brutal. And I can totally understand why people would be just shocked and sickened by that. And I've also seen people say, you know, well, she did it in front of Ellie too. Yeah. And she basically made Ellie herself. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And you see back to back, like when you switch that perspective back to Abby and you see her crying and screaming over her dad, and then you cut and you hear Ellie crying and screaming. Yeah. She did it. Yeah. She put Ellie in the same position.
Yeah, that whole scene is like, again, sort of like a replay, brilliant. Like when you
So
switch to, especially like on the first time around, it's just, pure rage by that point. The music, it's just this like, ambient white noise basically, while Ellie's just like, I'm gonna kill you guys, I'm gonna kill you, and then it cuts back to what was actually said in the room, because like you don't know by
So
that point.
good.
It's
You
like
actually
just
hear the conversation.
yeah, and you're kind of like, oh god, actually no, they kind of got off. Yeah, they could have been killed, but you kind of got off there at least. But by that point,
And you're
who
just
cares?
looking at Abby's face.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you see her realizing that she still feels empty and
Yeah.
that it's not going to bring her dad back. And she's
Yeah.
listening to this girl screaming for Joel.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like maybe reminded of her own experience. And I think she's realizing like what she's done.
So we've talked about like the core group of friends for Abby.
Yeah.
Obviously, new additions get thrown in here, and that's Lev and Yara.
Yeah.
What did you think of them?
So I really liked Yara, and then the second they said they're going to go back to the island, like obviously this is quite late in their story. I was like, oh, for goodness sake, she's obviously going to die. But then like she, with her kind of like when she does perish, she kind of saves Abby and Lev with like kind of her last moments, which I think is quite nice for her character, because even when she's dying, she's still caring for kind of her brother and and Abby, because they like all helped out. So it's I quite like them.
Mm-hmm.
I like Lev. I like that kind of story arc that they had together. I feel like I didn't necessarily like playing as Abby, but I didn't mind having kind of Lev and Yara as companions.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like they were quite nice. Like if that wasn't part of Abby's story, I feel like I wouldn't have liked it.
Yeah, because like they get thrown in because Abby gets like captured by the Seraphites, and then basically she finds this other Seraphite, Yara, who's getting tortured because she's like an apostate. She's deserted the cult basically.
Yeah.
Because her brother shaved his head and basically was a girl called Lily, but obviously wanted to be a boy named Lev. So there's like a whole. She basically sort of wanted to help her brother out with this sort of like identity crisis, and just wanted to get him away from there. So then they, Yara gets her arm broken. Abby sort of helps them out of the forest. They kind of like stay up in like a trailer park. Abby kind of goes their separate ways. Just wants to go find Owen at the aquarium, but then she kind of has second thoughts like, I need to
I've left them to die.
I need to go help these kids, and that becomes like Abby's new purpose. Like almost as like a kind of redemption thing,
like her way to kind of justify her taking like a life is to save another.
Yeah, it's almost the same thing as like you need to find something else to fight for. It's like I fought to kill Joel. I killed Joel. Didn't do me any favors. I've got these kids now that I can care for. Because I definitely remember the first time around, because obviously Yara gets her arm broken. The whole point of going to the hospital was to find medical supplies to then help her.
Yeah.
And you can't go for all that. You fight this monstrosity called the Rat King. Great boss fight. And then you go to the island and Yara dies. So it's kind of like, what was that all for? What did I go to this hospital for, to heal this woman? And it's just, but they didn't know that was going to happen, did they? It's just, it's just this world. It's very unforgiving. It's like, it's like the first game. You go through all that stuff with Henry and Sam just for them to obviously have what happened to them. It's not like you're thinking, oh, for God's sake, what was it all for? But yeah, I like Yara and Lev. I like Yara like giving her input on like Abby, because obviously like Abby, like Mel hates her just because like Mel's not too sure whether you're trying to get back with Owen because you guys used to have a thing. You've showed up with these two kids. What are you planning here? And this, you're a piece of shit, Abby. You've always been.
Yeah. And
that hits Abby quite hard, because kind of like, because Abby knows like she hates herself, but it's kind of like I'm trying to do better.
Yeah.
And like Yara's like, I think you're a good person. So it's a good like support system for Abby. And then obviously Yara gets taken away, so then it's Lev is what Abby needs to now care for and go for. And I like their relationship. So it's obviously like a parallel to Joel and Ellie, like Lev and Abby. So it's interesting. I like those side characters in her story.
Yeah.
And what did you think? Because we're going to like the ending now.
Yeah.
I mean, up to start off, first of all, before the actual ending, you get a boss fight
against Ellie.
Against Ellie. What did you? Yeah. What did you think of that?
I hated it. I didn't want to do literally the second we went into the boss fight, and I was you run into the room, and then you've got to kind of sneak around Ellie and attack her from behind. I just stood still, let Ellie shoot me, and just hoped that would be the end of it. But apparently not. So I had to then you obviously have to fight Ellie, and the damage you do, it's just I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I didn't like the fact that they were making me do that. I feel like I would have preferred it if it was like a cutscene.
Right.
I just didn't want to do it. It was that, and at the very end of the game where you'll confront Abby again, but reversed.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do that as Ellie. I didn't want to do what happened as Ellie. So it's, I just I get it's kind of that parallel of is it David in the first game?
Well, who Ellie kills.
Yeah, so it's that kind of parallel boss fight because you've got to sneak around them and it's like a human one. But
I had that fight spoiled for me, to be fair, when the leaks happened, because that was one of the gameplay clips that got leaked, was like a boss fight with Ellie. Obviously, you didn't know anything more than that. It wasn't that the ending fight didn't get leaked or anything, but that theatre confrontation did. So I was kind of like, oh, that's... Obviously, I didn't know anything, so I didn't have much of an opinion. I was like, oh, you fight Ellie... I don't know. Do you kill her? I don't know. But that whole, both fights are very brutal. I mean, especially that one in the theatre, because it's just like when Abby eventually gets the upper hand on Ellie, just breaks Ellie's arm, pummels her face in. Obviously, Dina comes in to try and help, and just gets her face smashed into the concrete. It's just so brutal, and you're just like, what's going to happen here? And then, Abby goes to kill Dina,
and Lev stops her.
Yeah, which I thought that was interesting. I know quite a few people are like, oh, well, it's the same with Ellie not killing Abby. You've come this far, what are you doing? Just do it.
It was killing Dina out of spite, because it's just that this will hurt Ellie because she's killed my friends, I'll kill her friends.
Yeah.
But then Lev's that makes you no better. I don't want to carry on, being with you if you're gonna do something like that.
Because it's you've done all this to help Lev. Do you want to put Lev at risk now because you've done obviously this horrible thing? And it's almost pull back Abby. What's gonna be enough for this? Even if you do it, you're not gonna feel
you're not gonna get anything from it.
Yeah, and then they go their separate ways. I've seen a few people say how do they get out of the theatre afterwards? Because by that point, Ellie had her arm broken, face pummeled in. Dina was bleeding out because she got her face pummeled into the ground. Tommy got shot and hit in the leg. Jesse's dead. So it's kind of how did they even get out of there?
Yeah.
But they somehow do. And it cuts back again. Another nice bit of levity. Ellie being on the farm with Dina and JJ, their kid.
Yeah,
that's really nice segment. They have a little lot. They have the livestock. They have lambs. It's all very wholesome.
I was very confused by that because I was just this feels. I don't
Do you think it was a dream or something?
It's something similar. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just this doesn't feel right. This feels too tranquil.
Yeah, and then
something's about to happen.
Which then it does because Ellie still has PTSD from Joel dying, and that whole performance and stuff is so good. When she just, because it's literally a spade falls over in the barn and it just flashes up to Joel, obviously being killed, and Ellie has a whole flashback of trying to get into the room to save him, and he's screaming out, and it's just her having a panic attack with the baby there, and Dina has to help and take the baby off of her. So it's all and that kind of pushes Ellie down the route of to be able to sleep at night. I need to go and finish the job. I need to go find Abby.
Yeah, and obviously Tommy's kind of goading her as well, and almost kind of I don't know what the word is,
gaslighting
her into it by saying you said that you would do this. I can't be manipulating her.
It is
in a way.
It's very again they're very driven by hate after what happened. I mean, obviously Tommy kind of went off his own back to go to Seattle first of all, which then spurred Ellie to go, like rescue him, but at the same time, if she could have killed Abby, happy days. And then Tommy, crippled, he's blind in one eye, so he's literally like, well, I can't go find Abby. I know where she is. I can't go. And you promised, you said, you said you'd make her pay. That's what you said. And obviously, it's it is manipulating to a degree, sort of reminding her of her promise and like being like, you don't let me down. Because I mean, like by that point as well, Tommy is like an uncle kind of figure, obviously, like because of Joel, it's like he is kind of family to Ellie. It's like, do I want to let Tommy down? And then like they go to Santa Barbara, and Ellie just I've replayed that section last night because I finished the game last night, and that whole section, like when she gets like impaled by the tree and like
I thought she was gonna die.
Just unceremoniously.
It's just like she's come all this way.
She does well. She does well. She gets like impaled by a tree branch in her side. Obviously, hangs upside down for like however long, bleeds out, and she just kind of stitches herself back up. But then it gets like reopened a couple of times. So she does well. And then you go to where like Abby's been captured and like held to go find her, and you go to like the beach, and it's like her on like the pillar, and like that whole visual of like Abby not looking like she has, like she's just
broken.
She's like, her hair's been cut off, she's like skinny, she's just not the muscle bound like sort of monster you've been like used to fighting. And it's just quite, the whole fight's quite, it's almost like pathetic in a way. Like it's just, what are you two doing? Like you're both in no shape to be fighting. Like, why are you doing this? And obviously it's Ellie, they almost go their separate ways, but Ellie can't let things go. She gets one final flashback of Joel, and that's when she threatens Lev, which like it's interesting like whether she would have gone through with killing him or not, to try and get Abby to fight her. And then Abby sort of like relents, because it's that like initial like I think she like throws Abby down. It's like, I can't let you leave, and she's like, no, I don't want to fight you, Ellie, like let me go. And then they just end up, and it's just really brutal.
I mean, I hated that scene at that point anyway, because you can see in Ellie's mind that she like obviously went there to enact revenge, but then she sees Abby, and then you can tell that she suffered, because she goes through this like compound where everyone's slaves, and they're being treated really poorly, and then you kind of see this kind of sea of pillars of people that have been like strung up and left there to die. So you kind of get this like overwhelming sense of just dread. Yeah. And then she's still alive, Lev's still alive. She cuts Abby down, and it just like, it doesn't feel right at that point. And I think Ellie, you can tell that, Ellie at that point, she knows it's not right to do anything.
It messes with her for sure, because it's like, it's almost like she could have expected like to cut Abby down and they just start fighting, but no, it's like Abby runs straight over to save Lev, and try and get them to safety. And like she says to Ellie, this boat's down the way, like come on, we'll get out of here, as such. So it's like, and just seeing Abby like a shell of her former self, like you got to be like, I came here expecting a, it's probably it's probably the same as like when Abby came to find Joel, she probably like expected this, just like this monster, like this really evil man.
And the first thing he does is helps her.
And it's just like, okay. And it's kind of like, well, I've come. I found it interesting, like throughout like the previous bits in that level, where she's kind of like, oh god, you better not be dead already, Abby. Like these infected, like I hope these guys didn't kill you, or I hope the Rattlers didn't kill you. Like she just really doesn't want to come all this way just to have that satisfaction taken away from her for killing Abby. And the fight is just, I like replaying it. Even I was kind of like, this is really hard to like sit through, because it's like when like Ellie digs like the knife into like Abby, and you have to like keep mashing the button. I was like, just take control away from me, please.
It's just so brutal what they made you do.
It's the fact that you're like, Abby's not armed, she's like fist fighting you, but like for the first stage, like Ellie's got her knife, so you're just like
just slashing, and you can see like the kind of blood coming off Abby, and it's just like, oh my god. It's just not a nice. And then obviously towards the end, like when Ellie tries to drown Abby, it's her like her two fingers get, because I found that interesting. The whole point is that she was just trying to hold Abby's head down, but it's just Abby just bites her fingers off, and it's just obviously you think Ellie's going to drown Abby, but she doesn't.
And that's another point. Like, you know, a lot of people wanted it to either give you the choice to kill Abby or for Ellie to just kill Abby, like straight up. Like, you know, I guess by that point, just from your description, you wanted them both to get out of there.
I just, like, you know, you can clearly see at that point they're both just so done with this. And, you know, Ellie doesn't want to do it. She just feels like she has to do it because she doesn't know what her purpose is otherwise. You know, she thinks this is what she needs to feel better. And, you know, you can tell that it's not what she needs. And, you know, when she gets there, she knows it's not what she needs. But then in her mind, she's like kind of convincing herself, well, you've come all this way. You have to do it now. You have to go through with this. And, you know, I didn't like the fact that it went on for so long because it felt like I was doing it for like 10 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, this is just brutal. And the fact that it made you, as you say, like mash the button to stick the knife further in and like actually physically drown. It's like, oh my God. And it's terrible.
And then Ellie only really stops because she gets like one final flash of like Joel basically, but like from a happier time. Like when he wasn't dead, they just gets it's almost like, you know, it's almost like him sort of being visualized and being like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing, kiddo? What's this about? And then that's, you know, it's almost like a thing of like, you know, obviously I could forgive Joel for what he'd done. I can muster up the strength to forgive Abby. And it's like interesting all the different, you know, just people's interpretations of why Ellie didn't kill Abby and like the sort of points people make about, you know, by that point, Ellie could have lost like her humanity like completely. Like, you know, she could still, you know, up until that point she was still like a bit jokey. Like obviously her with like Dina and stuff on the farm was like still very, you know, just classic comedic Ellie. And it's by that point like that just innocence would have just been taken away just in her pursuit of vengeance. And it's just, you know, it's obviously it's a very bold choice. It's the same with Naughty Dog taking control away from you when Joel killed, you know, basically wanted to shoot up a hospital. It's just, you know, it's not that kind of game where you get the choice. You're just there to watch what these characters do. In terms of like the ending, obviously with Abby and Ellie having their fight and Ellie choosing to not kill Abby, like where do you sort of sit on that? Because that's a point which is, you know, everyone has their opinions on, and, you know, should she have done it? Should she not have done it? Like, where do you sort of sit on that?
I remember when I first started seeing like the discourse about that ending, I was so shocked that people got to that point and were disappointed that Abby didn't die, because I was on my first playthrough sitting there like screaming at my TV, stop, like leave her alone, don't kill her. Like, and I remember like going into that fight, just feeling so sick because I thought Abby was going to die. I thought Ellie was going to kill her. And I did not want that to happen. I'd become so attached to Abby, and I knew that Ellie going through with that wasn't actually going to help her either. Because we'd just been through this whole journey as Abby, seeing the consequences of that revenge and how it didn't actually help her. And I was like, Ellie, you don't want to go down that same path. So yeah, and I mean, it definitely took me a couple of playthroughs to like fully grasp everything going on in that story and what led Ellie up to that point and why she decided to let go. But I'm so glad that she did. I think, you know, I know originally she was going to kill her. And they ended up changing it. And I'm so glad, because I think, you know, they've said in interviews that it was Ellie's way of like keeping her humanity. And like, if at that point, as you said, like at that point, the player might not fully be aligned with Ellie. Like when she leaves Dina and goes back to Santa Barbara, it's like some people might be like, I'm not okay with this. And it's the first time we're in control of Ellie and maybe not fully aligned with her. If she'd killed Abby, I don't think I would have been able to forgive her for that.
No,
you know? And yeah, it's interesting seeing how the opinions have changed. I mean, there's obviously still some people who won't change their mind, and that's fine. But I see comments almost every day of people being like, you know, I hated it at first, and then I played it again, and then I played it again, and now I get it. And that totally makes sense. Like, it's so much, as you said. It's a demanding game. It's very emotional. I had to take several breaks on my first playthrough playing
Okay,
it
yeah,
because
yep.
it's just, it's a lot, and it is very demanding of a player.
Yeah.
And I can understand. Obviously, it generated very strong reactions, which is
Yeah.
understandable. I think it's commendable when people can revisit it and challenge themselves to maybe change their mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's unfortunate when people remain bitter and don't and keep their minds closed and
Yeah.
just or stop playing the game altogether, because it's like
Yeah.
you don't have all the context yet.
Yeah.
And like, I understand feeling strongly about Joel and feeling angry that he died, but
Yeah.
the game has so much more to offer than that.
I don't think it's as consequential to the story as people think.
Right.
Like, I don't think it would have made or break the game for me either way. I don't think if she killed her, I would have been upset. But I think all the people saying if only she killed her at the end, I don't think that would have changed very much about the game,
Yeah.
to be honest with you. And when you really, especially when you play it on a second or third playthrough, you really like understand the meaning of the ending is not the meaning of the ending specifically is not that, it's about this revenge tale where she's learning a lesson, blah blah blah. It's like directly tied into the conflict with Joel. Like it's just a visual it's just meant to be a metaphor for what's happening with Joel, and her kind of forgiving him through sparing Abby.
Yeah.
And that's why the final scene of the game is that flashback with her and Joel on the porch. So I don't think it really matters personally to me if she spared her or not. I think it does sort of create kind of a narrative dissonance that she's killed so many people to get to this point and then she spares her. It's a bit strange, but I can overlook that for the sake of it is a video game. Like it's like in Uncharted, Nathan Drake has murdered how many people. And he's still meant to be this, this a quick-witted, charming adventurer, even though he's like murdered so many people. So yeah, I don't think for the ending for me, I actually like the way the game ends. The main issue that I brought up in one of my videos with the ending is that I don't like that her sparing Abby doesn't have any bearing on Ellie's place in circumstances at the end of the story. Because Dina had already left by that point, and she'd already made, I guess, the ultimatum to Ellie to leave. So whether she killed her or not, it didn't really affect the ending at all, like in terms of what actually happened or where we leave Ellie's story from here on out. And I don't, maybe I'm just, not seeing the, I guess, like the creative vision from Neil Druckmann in terms of why he chose to do it that way. But I don't think it doesn't feel very thematically connected or anything to the story, to the events of the story. I don't think I think that decision should have had a bearing on Ellie's circumstances, just for me personally, because I think that's how stories should flow, in my opinion. Like I think those sort of connecting factors matter in a story, like a character having lasting consequences for their actions. And I understand that the consequence was Ellie already chose to leave. She made the decision and Dina left because of it. But I think it would have been better to have it directly tied to the decision to kill Abby or not.
That is the game as such. We're not going like beat by beat, but obviously with a show adaptation coming soon, what is there like points in the TV show that you kind of wish it could do better, or like how do you even think that the TV show could adapt this? Because I think it's going to be like quite the undertaking for HBO to tell this story.
Yeah, my thing is I don't want them to adapt it. The first one, I know that kind of you and Julep didn't really like necessarily the casting and particularly the chemistry between Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. I didn't think the casting. I think Pedro Pascal as Joel was really good. I didn't mind Bella Ramsey as Ellie in season 1. I feel like Bella Ramsey's obviously a good actress. I don't think she's the right fit for Last of Us Part 2 Ellie.
Okay.
I think they're very different. Like Bella Ramsey can give off that kind of childlike, you know, innocence a little bit more,
right?
And you know, kind of, you know, a little bit more of the kind of nuances that happened in the first one. Not to the same level, because obviously you've got a lot more that you can do within a game, and you're with the characters for a lot longer. There's kind of things that you can do that kind of help. I mean, the problem with this story is it's so cinematic, it's so interactive, that this is the right way to tell the story. You don't need to tell it any other way, and I don't know why there's so many things doing adaptations at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's just can't you just leave something as it is when it's already good?
I think especially with it being like an experiment in empathy, like it's not necessarily something you can pull on like a TV audience as well, like, you know, because I think it just would be a struggle, like, again, like in terms of how they may structure it, because you kind of like, you know, you want people to try and empathize with Abby. You don't want them just switching off their TVs to be like, well, I'm not watching this now. If it's going to follow this, you know, if it's going to follow this Abby character who I hate, like, and you know, when are they going to kill Joel off? Are they going to kill him like early on? Are they going to try and like do like a flashback thing at the beginning? It's just so big, and like I imagine they'll do like 2 seasons as well, and it's kind of like what they're going to put into this story. And like, as you say, I feel like with Bella Ramsey, she could pull through, like she has played like serious roles, and like, you know, she did get some good emotional scenes as Ellie in like the first series, but yeah, Last of Us 2 Ellie is just a completely different
beast. Very different.
I don't think I could see Bella Ramsey doing like the fight scenes, either of them really, like the like Abby fight scenes, like neither the one in the theater or like the beach, like that would be such a big, I feel like just that scene alone is just such a big undertaking. Like, you know, I could see them doing the flashback scenes. I imagine like the museum scene. I will prefer the game. Like, I think no matter what, I don't think the show is going to change my opinion on that scene in particular.
There's a lot more you can do in a game setting as well. Like, you don't, because like when you're watching a TV show, you know, it kind of skips over a lot of things. Like, it will make references to something, and you know, maybe they'll do that, maybe they'll do that, but you are actually physically doing the actions in the game, so it's more personal, and you kind of, you know, you're there with the characters.
Well, it's like, you're having a day out with Joel. At this point, it's not you're not Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal go to the museum.
Yeah, so it's more personable. But I think what they should do is they should take some feedback from what they did on the first season and what they did right on there. Like, the best episode of the first season, you know, was a retelling of Bill's story. Episode 3 was, you know, it was a really good story, and you know, the highlight of The Last of Us season 1. So I think they should kind of reflect on that and say, this is kind of more the way that we should push. We should focus more on these characters that maybe didn't get as much screen time in the actual game, give them a story, and then like people who played the games will go, oh, that's, you know, that's really interesting. I really liked that. You know, it kind of gave me a new kind of perspective on that character. Whereas if they do just like, you know, they do the story as it was, I don't see it working.
Yeah, I mean, like, you might hear, like, in the interviews as well, like, I might be repeating myself a bit, but I feel like in the show, maybe they could do, I should say, like not like a spin-off kind of episode, but maybe focus on a few details. Like, I'd like to see if they maybe did, like, how the scars came to be, and, like, their whole thing with WLF, maybe just expand on that side a bit more, potentially.
There's a lot about the Prophet, and, like, when they died, like, mentioned within the game, but you know, obviously, because that happened like, I think 10 years, a certain amount of time ago, that it's only kind of whispers and mentions.
And it's like, I mean, even as well, like, you could do, if you wanted to introduce like Lev and Yara, you could potentially, even if it's like a flashback episode, you could do how, you know how they basically became apostates, like how they got cast out by their community. You could do stuff like that. You know, whether it's going to focus on more on like Abby's friendship group, maybe like their journey back from Jackson. There's things they can do. There's stuff they could do just as a separate thing. Like, you know, it almost, I don't even know how, it'd be like the equivalent of like doing DLC for like the game. Like if you wanted to do, this is going to focus on this part and this part, you get to play these. But like for a TV show, it's just such a big undertaking. And like, again, if they choose to do that over 2 seasons or what, it's just so hard to tell, especially with like rumors of it potentially being like 7 episodes. It's like, can you even tell?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, because it's like a 20-hour game. Like, can you even tell, try and condense it into that length of time and it still feel natural compared to how you play it? So I think it would be, it's just so hard. Like, until it comes out, I just don't know whether...
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about it.
It's really hard because I rag on a lot about how I would reorder the second game to be more like paced better and have certain tidbits of story information delivered to the player differently. Like, I think that we shouldn't have found out it was Abby that killed Joel till much later in the game, like after we got to know her. I think for me that would have just hit better if we were getting to know her first and we learnt her story about how her father was killed by this man and we don't know who it is, and then we're shown the brutal scene of her killing him, but we're conflicted because we like Joel and we like her by this point. I think but that's, you know, it's taking away from what Neil intended, obviously, because he obviously put it in a certain order for a reason. It's just not something that I resonate with. No. But I think if they're open to changing certain ways the story is structured, because I think they will have to anyway, because a game is structured very differently to a show, so I think they're going to have to change it. But I think it would be smarter to... It's hard. I haven't actually thought about this. This is a good question. I think it would be smarter to give Abby... Make the side casts more likable, because I don't really care for any of Abby's friends. Like, make the banter and stuff, and maybe build a few of their relationships up a little bit better. The only one I felt connected to was Manny, because he was the only one we seemed to spend any time with. And Owen as well. I thought Owen was a good character, but the others are just like whatever. They're just cannon fodder. But I think making it's gonna all hinge on, I think, Caitlin Denver, is that her name? Who's playing Abby? Or Denver or whatever. I think it's all gonna hinge on her performance and how she's received by the audience for what she does, because Abby is going to be such a nuanced, difficult character to play. So I think everything is going to be hinged on how Neil he's not directing it, obviously, so how the showrunners direct her to play Abby, and whether they make small personality changes from the game to the show. I think I'd be open to that. And really making Ellie seem like maybe leaning into Ellie's darker side a bit more. Like, I know the second part of part 2 was really good for that. Like, it showed Ellie going to this deep, dark place. But I think making Ellie a little bit more irredeemable, to put her kind of on equal ground to Abby, would go a long way as well, to make people see, oh, you know, there's 2 sides of this. Because Ellie does some bad things, really bad things in the second game, but I don't think she does anything as irredeemable in my eyes as what Abby did to Joel, like beating him to death in front of a loved one, knowing that it was a loved one pretty much, because her begging her to stop and crying, like, take her out of the room, bro. Like, what are you doing? Like, seriously, like, it was so messed up.
What do you think the show could maybe do to, like, maybe improve some aspects of, like, the game, like, in the adaptation?
Oh, cover the in between 5 years. I think that was a big missed opportunity. I think the second game should have been 2 or 3 years after the first game. Ellie and Joel are doing well, but the doubt is starting to creep into Ellie. And then you hear rumblings of someone out to try and kill Joel, and you're like, okay, yeah, I've done bad things, but that's probably some scavenger. And you hear about this Abby character, built like a tank, who's just rampaging through America to find Joel. Like, what the hell did you do, Joel? And Joel would never tell what he did, because he was the only person that survived. And they could explore that. I was like, Joel, why does this person want to kill you so much? And not telling, and eventually he finds out because Abby says, you know, he killed my father, did that. I think that should have been second game. Is that entire Abby in pursuit, and maybe the end of it could be Ellie deciding to go with Abby is like, listen, I should have died in that table. Here's my opportunity for redemption. Let's see what happens. And Joe can be crushed. Or there's an awful lot more to explore than let's kill Joe inside the first 5 minutes.
What did you sort of think of like Pedro and Bella, like as the characters?
I thought they were okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Sometimes I thought I don't know. Sometimes I'm a bit iffy on Bella's performance. And I was like, it's not Abby. Sorry, it's not Ellie from the game.
Yep.
It's an adaptation. Even Pedro Pascal's Joel sometimes I'm like, I'm not sure, but it's an adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
And with a game, you can literally fine tune an eyebrow movement in for the cutscene. You can, or the animators can make it even better than humanly possible. And every moment, like every facial they can amplify it even more so than you can do in real life. So I still think the show is pretty good, and I'll definitely be following on for season 2. And any changes they make or any updates they make, that's stuff I'm kind of most interested in, like in the Bill Town episode. All the stuff we'd never seen in the game. Went, now they saw kind of like any additional stuff is good to me. It's almost a question of if they finish out the Ellie and Abby story, will they and Joel will be gone? Like, would they say, okay, here's season 4 and all new characters, and just like you can pluck people from around the world and create a Tales of The Last of Us?
I think the thing I feel strongest about is them sticking to their guns about Abby's story, like the way she's introduced, and the concept of going from like blind hatred of somebody to developing empathy for them over the course of their, I don't want them to change that. Like, I don't want you to learn about Abby first.
Okay.
Before she kills Joel. I just think that's completely a different story. And honestly, I don't see Neil Druckmann doing that, because I think that could be seen as some sort of admission that he fucked up with the game. And
like backtracking almost to be like, oh no, sorry, we should have done it. Yeah, no.
There's
that
no
makes
way
sense.
he's gonna do that. So that's the thing I feel strongest about. The rest of it, I think they have an opportunity in the show, because obviously you're not playing a game as one character. They have an opportunity to expand and to show these different perspectives. They've already kind of done that with the first season. So there's a precedent. So yeah, they might. And if they do make it 2 seasons of TV, which I don't know. I mean, I'm okay with more content, but it makes me nervous about how they're going to split it up.
I almost don't want them to run into maybe like the problem the game had, like if it's like Bella Ramsey's season like throughout, and then the final shot of the season is the like theater confrontation and the whole you killed my friends and then you wasted it, cuts to black. It's like, oh, what's going to happen here? And then like season 3 opens with it just being like Abby centric for however many episodes. I feel like it might be the same thing as the game, just like where that scene came about and many like players were like, I can't play this. I'm not sitting through this playing as Abby. Like whether you'd get TV viewers be like, I'm not watching a whole series of television about this character that I hate. Like I think they do need to try and work out a way for that to be avoided, and obviously just get people to enjoy the whole picture without sort of hopping off early, because that's the main thing I think they may struggle with, and where they may need to juggle.
They could do like a mid-season thing where we're aligned with Bella up until episode like 6 or something, and then we get the switch, and then there's just more time with both of them. They could intersperse, or another thing I thought of is like, well, yeah, obviously there's the twist of Abby showing up at the theater and pointing the gun, but then there's that whole bit of we learn who Abby is, and why she killed Joel, and who her dad was, and we see Marlene again. And I was like, oh, maybe that would be like a cool cliffhanger to end the season on, because it's like, well, the first season ended with this massacre at the hospital, and then maybe this season could end with revisiting that, but from the other side. But then again, like you said, like there's the challenge of like coming back for a season 3 and being like, well, here's Abby, I don't know.
Because what do you, obviously with Abby, being such a big character in the game, what do you think about the casting for her, like Caitlin Denver as Abby?
I mean, I've never seen anything with her. Really.
I haven't either, so it's
just on appearance wise, maybe I would have gone with someone with a more muscular build, but we won't know until we see them in the actual show.
Yeah, because I mean, the acting capability of like Abby, like, you know, she gets some good like emotional beats. I feel like, you know, if you had like the right actor in that role, they could nail that. It'd be fine. But yeah, I think whether she'll bulk up or whether they'll use makeup maybe to like make, because it, you know, it is, she's just an imposing threat to Ellie, and obviously it's the whole, you know, seeing her in a weakened state in Santa Barbara is such a like iconic visual of that like character. It's just, I couldn't sort of see just Bella Ramsey and Caitlin Denver doing the Santa Barbara stuff or doing the theatre stuff unless they just condense it down or just don't, you know, shorten it so it's not like a full-on fight. It's just a quick scuffle and then they're done.
Yeah, I feel a little disappointed too, just because, as you said, it is such a big part of Abby's character in the game, and it's you know, the physical manifestation of her trauma.
Yeah.
And it is something that makes her so unique. And especially as a woman, you know, like seeing different body types and seeing somebody who's unconventional be like the protagonist in a video game it's huge.
Yeah.
And you know, I was a little bit like, oh. but also like we haven't seen her do the part. And I know she's a good actor, and so I'm sure she'll be able to pull it off. Whether or not she, you know, bulks up for the role, we'll see, right? But as I've said, I think in a couple of my videos, like they'll still be able to tell Abby's story without that. It'll be a shame, but it's not the end of the world. And also Abby is so much more than her body and her muscles, right? Yeah, I can understand why some people are disappointed, but I think it's also been really discouraging to see like so much of the negative discourse and the hatred coming from like within the Last of Us community and the people who actually like Abby. It's like, why are you setting this girl up? Like she already is going to have so much working against her. It's like she needs the support of people who actually like the character.
Yeah, exactly.
Did you see basically that Neil Druckmann has said there is the potential for
I saw
The Last of Us 3?
Yeah, I saw something on probably on YouTube somewhere that there was mention that if they wanted to do it, there is a story that they could try and adapt. But I don't think there was anything that was solidly said, we're making Last of Us Part 3.
No, it's more like we have the idea for what the story could be.
It's all hypotheticals and speculation, and I imagine it's probably been like kind of a strategic move to see how much kind of hype around, like if they did make 3, you know, this is kind of how they would gauge its interest. So.
I always think like a TV show as well, like obviously you can make TV shows like a lot quicker. Like, is it going to get to the point where they're kind of like, oh, we've done The Last of Us 2 now, like we need to get this third game cranked out, or could they just leave it? And obviously, you know, the characters would most likely be, if they're using like Ellie or whoever, they'd be older anyway. So, you know, you could probably wait however many years for them to develop a game and then make a TV show. But
when I was talking to one of my family members about the TV show, he was asking like, oh, so does, you know, the second game wrap things up? And I was like, well, they've done a documentary now. They say there might be a third one. So I saw your reaction to it. Obviously, very, very excited that this, this is a possibility that they may even be making a third one. So I was going to ask, because it's obviously, it's almost weird hearing him talk about it. It's like a vision he's had from like God or something. It's like, it's like,
yeah, literally.
It's like I was mulling on this for a while, and then suddenly the concept came to me, and I was like, oh, what's the concept, Neil? Like, what do you think that could possibly be? Like, what would you like to see from a third like Last of Us game?
Oh my God, I have so many thoughts. I've been like thinking of where they could possibly go with the third installment since the second one came out. I have like a whole notebook full of ideas. But I'm also not surprised that it's taken them so long to think of the concept, because it's just like, yeah, I mean, they kind of left it somewhat open at the end, but also not in so many ways.
Yeah.
And like he said, you know, if they never made a third game, I think it'd be okay.
It's the same as like if they never made a second game, because it's sort of like
exactly.
the first game ends on that line. It's kind of like, oh, I wonder where things go from here, but you know, might not necessarily need to be answered. And then obviously they made the second one. So now I completely get what you mean by that.
The first game left a lot of room, I think, but also it didn't demand more.
No,
you know?
No.
As far as the third game goes, I think like he said before, you know, the first game is about just stripping it back, simplifying it as much as possible. The first game is about love.
Mm-hmm.
The second game is about hate, more or less.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, what would be like one word to sum up like a third installment?
Mm.
And the one that stuck out to me the most was hope. Because
okay, yeah.
Obviously the second game is such a misery.
Yeah.
And focuses so much on like the worst parts of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what if the third game is about humanity's resilience? Is about the good things, is about like, you know, how we can come together and like rebuild. And what would that look like?
Mm.
Because I think another thing they could maybe look at is like who are the last of us?
Okay, yeah.
Is it like the last of humanity,
Mm.
or is it the last of the people who remember the old world?
Okay, yeah. That's interesting.
And there could be this struggle between like the older generation versus the newer one who were born into this world.
Yeah.
And so this is all they know. And like, you know, Abby says at the end of the game, like the Fireflies, their goal was always to restore society, but it's like that society doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And it's not going to work now. And there could be an interesting tension between like the older generation trying to reestablish that society, which is not going to work in this context, and the younger generation being like, well, no, like that's stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know.
Yeah.
So I think there could be that kind of friction, old generation and new. And as far as Ellie goes, like figuring out like what she wants, like she's kind of in charge of her own life for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She doesn't have anybody put like just cargoing her across the country. She doesn't have this vendetta driving her.
Yeah.
She's alone. And so, and I know that was her biggest fear, but I think it also presents her the opportunity to like actually figure out who the fuck she is and what she wants.
I had like a story point come to mind, which could be like interesting in a way. It'd be like if Ellie met like another immune, maybe like another immune like kid, I thought, and it could be like if they almost ended it like on the same choice again, like but this kid actually gets to have the say in like whether they can save the world. And obviously it's sort of Ellie could almost have like another Joel moment and like, you know, stop this from happening completely, but it's sort of like, no, Joel never gave me the choice, so I need to let this person have the choice. And then it's still like my life like it's still kind of like her life mattering like as well, like in her mind.
That would be really significant.
But it'd be, you know, how they pull that off. I feel like they could throw like another immune person in there, but it's obviously other stuff's got to happen in the game. That was the one point where I was like, oh, they could do maybe something with that, because it is one of her biggest, not like regrets in a way, but obviously she really wanted her life to matter. Obviously Joel's whole point about her life mattering was just that she gets to live in like this society. But it's sort of like, you know, if there was like another kid who wanted the same thing Ellie did at that point, could Ellie just, you know, sort of sit back and let them make that choice and just not interfere? Because then it kind of almost leads back into like your thing of like of the old versus new. It's kind of like for this old society to come back, this kid who's known nothing but the new world just will never get to see that happen either. Like it's sort of having to sacrifice yourself for, you know, society to come back to the way it previously was and just, you know, adapting to it. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see where they go from here. Even in that documentary, like them mentioning like the Tommy light side story.
That was so weird.
I was like, what's Tommy got really to do? Because I mean, it'd be an interesting like, you know, thing to go into. But I mean, he's obviously, his life's kind of falling apart just because of the whole his revenge story.
He's lost everything. He's lost everything. And this, like, we can talk about Tommy if you want, but yeah, he's lost. I don't know how they could possibly pick it up with him, because I feel like, as you said, like, what does he have? Nothing.
No.
And I mean, another theory that I have that I would love to see, I don't know, is it's interesting you mentioned another immune kid, because that's something I thought of. And what if you actually play as that kid?
Yeah.
And somehow he or she or they meet Ellie.
Yeah.
And Ellie becomes the Joel.
In
that relationship, because we've seen the, like, you know, Joel and Ellie, Abby and Lev dynamic in these two games, but you're always playing as the older one. So what if this time you're the kid and you're looking up to Ellie as like your Joel? I think that would be a really cool way of like keeping Ellie in the story, but passing it on.
Yeah.
And it's and what you said about, you know, maybe if it ends up being about immunity, which I don't know, it might not, because the second game wasn't really about her immunity at all.
No.
But the idea of her giving somebody else the choice that she never got, that could be really healing for her, I think.
I don't think The Last of Us needs a sequel. I'll say that. I don't think The Last of Us needs a third entry. I'm very happy with how the second game ended. I don't think I need a third game. If they make one and it turns out to be great, fine. Because, you know, I probably would have said the same thing about the first game. I don't need a second game.
Yeah.
Because the first one ended so great, but then the second one came out and I ended up like thinking that was pretty good as well. So maybe I could be wrong, but I want Naughty Dog to move on to other things because they have such a creative, talented team that I just want them to do other things.
It's about time, isn't it? Like, you know, they've had their years, or like The Last of Us, then remastering it and then remaking it, and then The Last of Us 2. I completely get what you mean.
Man, it's been over a decade now. It's like it's what 11 years, like, and there's only been 2 mainline games, and there's been more re-releases than mainline games. Like, come on, like, move on to something else.
What do you want to see Naughty Dog do next? Like, do you think sort of put The Last of Us on ice for a bit, or would you like to see, because obviously, you know, they're the Uncharted studio, they did Jak and Daxter back in the day, what would you like to see them do?
I mean, you know, there's a lot of things happening nowadays where people are just kind of rehashing old IPs and, you know, making a new one, and you know, well, as long as they don't, like, it doesn't get to like the PS6 or like the new generation and they make The Last of Us remake, remastered, part 2, part 1, you know, whatever.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, exactly. So as long as, I just want things to be less that. I don't mind if as long as they have a story there, I don't mind if they make a part 3 or if they do a new IP, or, you know, I don't mind what they do as long as they're kind of, you know, confident in what they're making and they're passionate about what they're making. I think that's kind of the main thing that a lot of bigger companies, Ubisoft, Activision, some of these, like, you know, they don't really necessarily care about that anymore. They're only out to kind of make some quick money with microtransactions and things like that. I think Naughty Dog is one of those studios, they actually care about making games. They care about the stories, the characters, and like a lot of the elements within it. So I think as long as they keep making games, I don't care what it is.
Because it's like with the factions mode, which was like the Last of Us multiplayer they were going to do, which they had to basically shelve because it was kind of like, this is taking too much attention away from our single player elements, which is what everyone loves us for. I kind of respect that. I would have liked to have seen, because I liked the Last of Us 1 multiplayer, and obviously like people have been speaking about this factions mode for like years, so just the fact that they've had to cancel it after so long is it is sad, and it's like, oh man, like what happened? Like what happened to cause that?
They'd have to put like a separate team on it, like, aside from their kind of main game management.
So it's just like, you know, I'm sad I don't get to see it, but like, if it means they'll do whatever with their story side, like whether it's, you know, probably The Last of Us for a little bit, just because everyone's going to be kind of fatigued setting it now, just because of how many times they've remade it, remastered it. Even if it was like a spin-off story, it's kind of like, come on, just give it a break now. Same with Uncharted, like, don't go back to Nathan Drake. Maybe do like another spin-off story or something with that. But just, you know, they have the narrative chops to do, you know, they can do like swashbuckling adventures. They can do these like more grounded, serious stories. So just, you know, just do whatever, like literally take it wherever. Like, they're a good studio.
Experiment with things, you know, just do whatever you want. Just I think the main thing is just keep the passion that they have, and that's, you know, as long as they do that, I think they'll continue to thrive.
Yeah, no, exactly. Here's Adam McDermott with what he wants. Sorry, it's just a funny thing what he wants. What he wants Naughty Dog to do next.
I want them to do space pirates.
Okay.
I want them to do like that TV show Firefly. Just a bunch of space pirates with a big adventure akin to Uncharted, plenty of witty dialogue and banter, one heroic leading character, and that they're off on an adventure to find whatever. Uncharted in space, but with no ties to actual Uncharted. and then they could use some of the gunplay they found in, what do lasers? Maybe lasers. But yeah, I want them just to have this palette of create as many interesting environments you can.
Yeah.
You don't have to be bound by the laws of Earth. You can just go mad and let your creativity juices flow. Combat is fine, but it's mostly about story and people. And just let the staff work on something nice and fun and colorful for a while before they go back to Last of Us.
Yeah, no, completely agree. It's just give them a tiny break and then maybe drop back into that depressing world. I feel like a globe-trotting Last of Us adventure would be very, if they could accomplish that, I don't know how they would do it, but that would be very interesting. Like because I mean, you want to see like how other corners of the world turned out. Like how did how did the UK turn out? How did like Asia and like Russia and that lot turn out in the infection? Like that would be so interesting if they could, I don't know, chuck a couple of the characters on like a helicopter. Maybe they could find a helicopter and just go, we're going to go to this place and see what's happened here. Like that would be good. Or again, like a sort of Tales from The Last of Us, where they do just go globe trotting, like switching to different mini stories as such, like in one game, like maybe. But yeah, I think Space Pirates does sounds like a good plan to me as well, to be fair.
So with a game like this, as I say, very, very controversial at launch, it literally divided a lot of opinion at the time. Did you see like any of like the online like discourse at the time, or did you kind of just hear rumblings?
I remember there being a lot of negativity towards the game, and a lot of people not liking it, not enjoying it. I never actually actively looked on forums and saw like bits about it or anything like that. So I kind of kept myself quite distant from it. But I remember there being a very negative image of this game.
Yeah.
Did you get a chance to browse that subreddit, The Last of Us 2, before it got shut down?
No, I didn't.
Oh my god, the amount of and it was people, when you mentioned about limited information, many folks were making horror remarks about Abby's sexuality. And then like, oh, she's transsexual, the transsexual main character. And it turns out like, no.
No,
just just a buff chick. If you watch mixed martial arts, they do exist.
I found it so mind-boggling at the time, where it's like, oh, this, it was obviously, oh, there's a trans person kill Joel, and it's like, no, you're just assuming that. There's no, again, you're going off no context here. I was like, what is the internet doing? Like, what are we thinking about? Like, just
the trans misogyny is just so disgusting.
It was such a heartbreaking thing to hear Laura Bailey talk about her. I mean, because at the time as well, like I remember at the time when it happened, I was like, what? Like, why are people going after her? Like, just leave her alone. And then like the documentary sort of raising the point that even just like her newborn kid got
her
involved.
Baby.
It's just like, why? Like they like none of them like deserve it. Like they're I don't know.
Even the writers who actually were responsible for those decisions don't deserve that level of vitriol and death threat. Like y'all, it's a story.
Yeah.
Like, and these are people.
Yeah.
Like, just I understand having strong reactions to it, obviously, but like the fact that people can't, and I mean, you have to think about who the people are who are gonna do stuff like that. And they're probably young.
Yeah.
And they're probably just following internet discourse on Reddit or whatever, and not thinking about the fact that they're talking to actual humans.
I think any sort of, and I see it in comment sections as well, people offering genuine opinions or criticism about the game, and like the fans of the game just really attacking them for it. And the same could be said both ways, like I said earlier, but there's a very defensive fan base to this game, specifically the second game, which is it's good. And I'm glad that over time, like over the last few years since the game came out, more people have kind of changed their mind on it. Because when the game came out initially, I definitely hated it. Like I thought the story was awful. But then once I learned to sort of see past my own biases and get over the fact that Joel died, I found a decent story underneath, not without issues. But yeah, it's still good. It's a decent game, and it's a very well made game. Very like Naughty Dog's attention to detail and their work in animation specifically, like all the way dating back to like Jak and Daxter, like their work doing like animations for characters and smooth transitions from pulling out a weapon back to gameplay, like just stuff like that. Their attention to detail is just immaculate, and always has been. So it's a very well masterfully put together game. But the problem is when you base these sort of games on such a strong narrative focus, the narrative is going to get critiqued a lot harder than in Halo or something like that. So that's kind of the double-edged sword. If you want to tell this really gut-wrenching, deep, layered, nuanced story, it's going to be picked apart by people online, as it is still getting picked apart 4 years later.
Because I guess, like, for you, obviously as like a Last of Us content creator, like, I imagine you probably still get quite a bit of that like divide just like in your comment section and stuff. Like, how do you sort of deal with that kind of thing? Because I know, like, I posted a couple of videos the other day on my account. Like, it's not like I cover it religiously or anything, but it was just like a couple of Last of Us videos, and then it just suddenly turns into Last of Us 2 is good, Last of Us 2 is bad. It's like, that wasn't the point of my video. So you guys you're just picking up the point. I just asked a general question. I was like, oh, I kind of missed the spores from the video games being in the show. And then it just turns into that. You're kind of like, okay, like, it just doesn't go away. So yeah, how do you cope with that?
It's getting harder and harder, to be honest. And yeah, it's a little exhausting, and I'm pretty religious with, like, not religious, bad word, but like diligent with monitoring my comment sections, and I have flagged certain words because I'm really conscious of like making my page and making my comment sections like a positive space and like a safe space, because I don't want, when people watch my videos, like, I don't want them to go into my comment sections and see all that crap.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of protecting my viewers from that. But then on the other hand, like, I still have to see it all and sort through it and see the same arguments made over and over again. And sometimes people attack me and personally, and I'm just like, okay, like, sometimes I can kind of let it roll off my back, but sometimes it's hard, and the fact that I get that kind of hate still 3.5 years later, and I'm like such a low tier content creator about this game, I can only imagine like what the creators, like the level, I can't even fathom.
That initial trailer that was swap the character models, that's the one thing I haven't changed my stance on. I think it was a terrible decision at the time, and I still think it's a terrible decision. I think one of the arguments for it was, well, yes, keep interest and maybe throw people off the scent. And my response would be, if people think Joel is dead and they're right, let them be right. They'll find themselves feeling very intelligent when the game comes out. And the second thing is, Marvel movies do it a bunch. But a Marvel movie is 2.5 hours and you're paying €10. You're paying 7 times that and you're spending way more time with the game. I was fully expecting to get a Joel and Ellie adventure. And I tried to avoid spoilers to go into it expecting, based on your trailer, they would be out and about in the world together, and that never happened. So I'm glad they might have had a bit of a, that might have been a mistake, because going forward, I do not trust any Uncharted or any Naughty Dog trailers.
I know that when the game first came out, is a big thing about the trailers and obviously them swapping out character models for, to make them look different. Where do you kind of sit on that kind of thing? Because I don't think I'd ever seen like a studio do that, like, particularly until like Naughty Dog did it. It was kind of like, oh yeah, maybe they shouldn't have done that. Like,
it's interesting, like, so much of the trailer was about their marketing and how it was, a lot of it was so intentional and carefully thought out, but they didn't mention that one trailer at all.
No.
And I mean, they address it in the director commentary. They talk about it when they get to that scene. And I think that was one moment where, they messed up. And Neil basically said that. He was like, in hindsight, probably wasn't the best choice. I think they were so panicked to throw people off the scent of Joel dying. Because they wanted to protect the story so bad. Like, that was their intention. It wasn't to like deceive people or be like, it was, we don't want people to guess, because if they guess, it's going to ruin, like, it's going to kind of ruin their experience of the story, So I think one thing they could have done to mitigate that whole thing is if, and I mean, this would change so much, but this is just a theory of mine, is like, what if Ellie had turned around in the game and it was Joel?
Okay, yeah.
And then she's kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? And then it's Jesse. So it's like, you know, technically that bit in the trailer is still in the game. It's just not the context that, you know, it would maybe would have felt less deceptive.
Well, I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who's listened to this episode, and a massive thank you to Adam McDermott, The Last of Us Explained, and Deadbeat Devil for coming on and doing those interviews. Really really nice chatting to you guys, and yeah, hope to do it again soon on another gaming topic. But yeah, I think in the meantime, have you got any closing thoughts on what would you score actually? What would you score The Last of Us Part 2? I gotta ask.
To play it out of 10. Play it and make your own opinion out of 10. That's my scoring.
I would go for an 8 out of 10. The Last of Us 1 is like a 10 out of 10 game for me, but this is like an 8 out of 10. But yeah, those were our thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. So yeah, have you played it? Let us know in the comments. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next episode of the Cinematic Trinity, where we are talking Madam Web. So look forward to that.
Indeed.
But in the meantime, I've been Michael.
I've been Kieran.